We have a new machine here that we're hopeful solves some of our tech problems. That we're hopeful.
Hopeful's a good word. Hopeful's a good word. Did you get a massive haircut?
I did it myself because I was so worn out from brushing my hair all the time and I was just worn out one day.
Good for you. Look at you.
My brush got caught in my hair and I'm like,
That's where it's getting cut. That's where it's getting cut. Oh my gosh, that's kind of funny. Impulsive much?
or just done with everything. That's
Totally
kind of where I
understand.
am.
Totally understand.
We need to put petrified wood to block.
Oh. Petrified wood. The decorations out. I had a pen. Well, hello, sir.
Good, I can't see the screen.
They don't want you to read.
I guess I can turn around. What a small packet.
The best ever.
Oh, so
Wee-hoo.
you said we fooled you with the first couple of
Yeah,
meetings, right?
yeah.
This is what we're doing to Tony.
Okay, it works. It works. Do you guys happen to have a pen since I evidently left without one? This, thank you. Here you go. We're gonna hope he shows.
We need we got to do the peanut gallery.
Who were you addressing? We're all facing it.
You pull Mary up to the
The
table.
yeah, I left it up to Tiffany, so Tiffany.
Oh.
Put you there.
Put you there.
Hmm.
Hi, Mary. Where would you like to be for future reference, August?
At the head of the table.
No, I like being on that side because you can see the screen and I don't have to like do this.
But it's more important for them to see the screen. Right?
Well, usually Ben sits there in front of
That's
the
true. That's true.
the
Get that
gizmo
connected.
and like,
Try to give some.
that way you can whack it when it's not working.
Well, I wanna sit over there.
Hello.
I'm about to move my chair.
Hello.
Got you over there, Tony.
There it is. That's why I wanted to be on this commission, that nameplate.
We were expecting Lederhosen and a
I know.
beer stein or
Beer
something.
stein.
I left it there, yeah.
Might have shocked Stevenson.
Yeah. Nice to come home to.
Pretty coloring. If it goes missing, oh, why?
Pretty sure that print goes free, so.
Years in hand. So Tony, I'm gonna warn you ahead of time,
Yes.
this is not normal. This skinny little packet is not normal. They did it to me the first couple meetings and I'm like, this is a breeze. And then all of a sudden there was one this thick.
I looked at it online today and saw new business blank.
Yeah, yeah. So I just want you to know, they're making it easy for you, so you stay and then watch out.
There you go.
Bait and switch.
Well, I did review that Parks planning document,
Mhm.
that whole packet. So that kept me busy.
That's good
But
homework.
that's what-
Yeah, that's good homework. Good info to have though too. let's go to city council, the Main Street and whatever back in their building. Stevenson downtown.
They
Chamber.
are back
Thank you.
in.
Couldn't think of the word.
and Not yet ready to open.
When should they be open?
They're doing some work in there and furniture and planting. some
Well, good.
interior
That was pretty
decorations.
fast considering.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chamber, council. Started with a C.
Cat shelter. The scene too. Whatever. set to the stage, it's all- You know what I'm talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Jeff can probably talk about it better than I can, but it reminds me. There's on the Toutle River, there's a facility called the SRS. And then just downriver from the Toutle River, the downriver from that, there's that FCF. So the fish catchment facility and the sediment retention structure are post Mount St. Helens efforts to deal with post Mount St. Helens, so mountain blows up, coughs out all over the landscape every time it rains.
And the
New
silt.
parts of the
Yeah.
mountain come into the Toutle River. And so the SRS, the sediment retention structure. Creates a big dam for sediment to collect here. That dam, I don't know how tall it is, but
And they have permits to make it taller, several,
Wow.
several
so
more increments.
more of the mountain comes down, fills that up and then add on top of it.
And actually, it's only captured about 50% of the sediment that's come down, and because it has been reached at the top.
Wow.
Didn't the first phase of it already exceed capacity and they've had to add on already?
Yeah, they've added several, they've been
Yeah.
authorized to add, I think, 3 additional lifts.
Wow,
So how tall would you say it is right now?
Oh, boy. Not sure I could.
I think
That'd be
it's-
interesting to see.
It's, yeah, if you go in on Google Earth and do the
Mhm.
side, it's up
Yeah.
here as a braided channel system and then way down here where it
Wow.
comes out. But the fish catchment facility was built so that fish go in there. And they pick the fish up and put it in a truck and drive it up to the top of the retention structure.
Funny. It
It's a pretty
It works,
standard practice, even on the Cowlitz and the Lewis River dams, it's a trap and haul. kind
Yeah,
of Situation, although they're moving to volitional passage.
you know that.
Is there any fish that can go up to Spirit Lake anymore?
City, capital C,
No.
C-I.
You know, I
I'm
know
not sure
they've
they
got
had
the-
any
Okay.
Admiral's fish.
City 1908.
and exclamation
I
point.
don't remember
believe that's-
seeing any when I was there. They had some snails
Try
that,
that one if it's
invasive
not
snails
there.
that moved in.
Isn't that weird? Yeah.
But we move fish up to the
I don't
tributaries.
think so, but it's
of
not
North
through
Fork to the-
checking for me.
And they can spawn, the problem is getting the juveniles back down, because they have to go across that
No.
sediment line.
So,
We tried to get the Corps of
The
Engineers to
city,
put in
the capital
structures
C,
that will help develop a channel across that
1908.
sediment plane, rather than having
An
these
exclamation
isolated.
point, but that may
separated
not be
channels.
it.
Fish get out there and get trapped and destroyed.
Right.
Mm,
Or they're easy pickings.
mhm.
Yeah, there's both, and Corps has, of course, more than willing to increase the height of the structure, but not do some of the more innovative work that would need to be done. And yet at the same time, you see the South Fork too, is doing pretty well in terms of fish going back there in the Green River as well. So
Does that end up on the western flank or coming from the western flank where there's less sediment?
well, the South Fork is
I'll spit for that, 'cause it's the handy dandy thing.
is more south, is more south of the North Fork,
course not.
as
Why
the
would
name
it
would
be?
suggest. And the green, the North Fork comes off the South Fork, and then the green goes almost directly east, I think. You're looking
Hey, Ben,
Yes.
what is the Wi-Fi Password?
Password 185.
It's City Hall 7121. There's no spaces in there,
Capitals,
capital C and capital H,
City Hall, 1421
7121.
712. Thank you.
We have Charlie joining us tonight.
Believe he'll be in person tonight.
I just saw a blue Tesla, if that's him.
Could be.
Oh.
How are you? Stranger,
As threatened, in person.
up there in the chair.
We saved the best chair.
Hi, Charlie.
Mhm.
Thank you.
It won't throw you backwards when you sit down.
Oh, that's good.
That's the one that only goes down.
Not the trick chair, you see the trick chair for me, huh?
Good to see you.
Nice to be back here in person after all this time.
Being off in the sunny climb?
Hmm?
Have you been off in the sunny climb?
Oh, yeah, I
Look
mean,
at his tan. We're not there
yeah,
yet.
yeah, no, it was, that's the new plan, is to be down there for 3 months, so. We'll do it again next year,
Wow.
as long as my joints will allow me to, climb up and down companionway ladders, I'll keep doing it.
Well, let's call the meeting to order. And this is the first time we've had a full complement in a while, so this is great. A rather short agenda, but a full complement nevertheless. So Ben, why don't you go over our public comment expectations, although I
All
don't see
right,
a lot of.
it'll be mostly for Mary then in person. We ask you to get the attention of the chair before contributing to any topic and stating your name for the record. At that time, Mr. Chair, I think since we do have a full complement, I'm wondering if we could add an agenda item talking about work planning. We have a very light meeting agenda
Sure.
and want to make sure that your expertise is being utilized well. So
You want to go over the remote options, although I'm not sure.
the
that's
remote
really good.
options, if anyone logs in the next few moments, you can get our attention by raising your hand. If you're on the phone, that's *9. If you are on Zoom, that is a function at the bottom of the screen. You can unmute and mute once you get the attention authority to speak. On the phone, that's *6. On the screen, it is the microphone shaped icon. If there are disruptions, the chair has the ability to cut off comments after 3 minutes, remove disruptive individuals, or recess the meeting to a later date if there's system disruptions occur.
Thank you, Ben. Everybody okay with adding that agenda item? I guess we could formally amend the agenda, but I'm not going to continue to. Okay, public comment, Mary, have you got something to share with us today?
Well, yes, thank you, Chair. Mary Rapar Stevenson. Ben and I are on the same wavelength tonight because I had work plan on my comments too. I thought the agenda was way light and I thought y'all had a work plan. So if you could go over it today, that would be fantastic. I think I've made some suggestions for it. There's always things that the planning commission should be and could be helping to help the city kind of make up its mind on what good planning they can do in the future. Tonight, I guess I know this isn't in your purview, but I want to talk about the splash pad on the courthouse lawn for that plaza project. And I think this is some of the baddest, worst planning I've ever seen, that they would plan for a splash pad that will need a bunker for the chlorine to be built, and yet no one has done the work to find out what it takes to build a bunker. Chlorine gas degasses and it's dangerous. And, so I'm very concerned about this whole project, but that splash pad that costs over $1 million really irritates me. I don't think we should be spending money for splash pads when we have a river 200 yards down that way. And chlorine gas is not nice. And there's a restaurant nearby. So I don't know what input you all are going, but I would have thought that the plan would have been to get you all to do some of the planning and to figure out the costs and benefits of this project. That's what a planning commission should do, I think. So I'm very concerned about that project. And I'm going to go to the elementary school meeting on Thursday at 5:30. I urge everybody in town to go, because I don't think we need to be closing the elementary school in Stevenson and sending kids up to a subpar building up in Carson. That building has asbestos. We don't know what its water system is, and I don't have kids in this school, but all children are ours in the community. So I don't think we should be doing that. And I think the community should be putting in comments there. So I'm just putting it out there for you all. Some people do have children in our elementary. That elementary school was redone in 2001. I was here for that. And it's new, it's safer. And I don't think we need to be sending kids up to Carson. We can consolidate down here. So just to let you all know, 5:30 at the admin building. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then. We don't have a role in the plaza with, or anything open at this point in time.
No, it was identified in the parks plan as one of the priority projects, which was approved by you all. And so now as it's moved into the engineering phase, planning commission hasn't been asked to advise on that.
Can we just take a minute? Mary, I don't agree with you on everything, but I agree with you about the elementary school. What's before the school board at this point?
Closure.
To transfer all the kids to Carson and close this building and mothball it, or?
I'm not sure, because part of the whole problem has been transparency and community involvement. So I'm coming into this game late, so I have been getting emails this last few days. And I've posted a few of the comments that I've gotten on my Facebook pages. And one of them was very, very thorough about the building up there. Now, I know we have asbestos in a lot of buildings and older buildings in our community. That building is 70 years old. And I also question what their water pipes are like, because we had issues up at the high school with water and water pipes and lead testing. So I'm going to this meeting to ask more questions, but I just don't see the reasoning. There's enough room at the elementary school for those kids that are in Carson to come down here, and those buildings are much older.
Yeah, so it's outside of our purview, but it nevertheless affects very much. You know, in neighborhoods and communities go through cycles where people my age, you know, finally sell their house and a young couple moves in with kids. It just happened next door. It was 3 young kids in the house next door. So, you know, these cycles happen, and then you want to have a school where those kids can ideally walk to, which they can from Chester. You know, the concept of closing this school is, I think, one of the most serious challenges we could face in terms of being a family-friendly city. If you don't have an elementary school. So it's a big deal as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I think it's an issue that, you know, the school board's trying to come to task with in terms of declining enrollment and budget shortfalls.
And I understand that's a
Yeah.
problem for them, but
But it is interesting to me that it seems to me that in this case, you're closing the school that has been upgraded most recently and is in the best condition. And you're closing that one and going to the one that hasn't received that same level of
yeah,
attention or
Yeah.
upgrade.
yeah. Yeah, it seems pretty strange, so
Yeah.
hopefully they rethink that, but I appreciate your point about people ought to show up and participate in that, so.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, we have minutes from our May 13th meeting. Thoughts, comments? Changes?
I read through them and they look good.
I agree.
Do I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes for the May 13th, 2024 meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
I,
Opposed, say nay. We're through. Then. Let's talk about this conditional use permit.
Okay. At that May 13th meeting, you held a public hearing on conditional use permit application number 102401 for the Stepping Stones preschool. Your decision after hearing public comments was to deny the permit pending adoption of findings of fact supporting the permit. The applicant's decision based on that was to withdraw the permit application before your decision was finalized. With the intent that they would submit a new application that's guided by legal counsel that they're getting about the religious freedoms that should be considered as part of the city decision on this issue. So they pulled the application. We've had a new pre-application meeting with them about submitting the application and providing those narratives for city action, city review and action. Typically, well, there's an optional hearing examiner process that the city has. A hearing examiner is a trained land use attorney that's can be appointed to hear any quasi judicial decision that would come before you all or the Board of Adjustment or the City Council. We generally use or recommend using the hearing examiner when applicants come in with legal representation from the start to have that trained land use attorney making decisions on arguments presented by outside legal counsel. So should they come in with a separate application for a preschool, we'll recommend the city council appoint the hearing examiner to hear this case. It becomes a very odd situation where we're going to provide the same notices to the public about the proposal for preschool. Public will be given the opportunity and asked to provide testimony in front of the hearing examiner because that's the quasi judicial decision maker instead of you all. We'll provide the appropriate notices for that if we do get the application and if the city council does direct the decision-making authority to the hearing examiner. And we'll inform you all to see if you want to submit anything on behalf of the planning commission, having already reviewed it in the city's behalf.
Well, I understand the spirit of your recommendation, and maybe the tactics of it too. But let me make sure I understand that when we as the planning commission make a quasi judicial land use decision like this one, and it's appealed to the city council, right?
No.
Not in this case?
No, it's a land use petition act appeal goes to the Superior Court.
Goes right to court, past the city council. Okay, I wasn't clear on that. Thank you. And so the point at which, to be a little flippant, everybody's lawyered up could be when it goes to court. Rather than here. I'm not feeling like we're the only people who can make decisions around here. But, yeah, I'm not sure why we need to turn this over to a hearings officer at this point. If we make a decision and they want to appeal it, then there'll be lawyers on both sides, won't there?
My understanding though, they're not appealing the
Well,
decision.
they're trying to
They're
re-apply,
resubmitting it, so
resubmitting the
it's
same
basically-
application with different arguments, sounds like.
So there's
With
no,
representation.
Yeah. So I guess, again, I'm sounding a little flippant here, but I'm not intimidated by that. So, I mean, again, it's a serious matter, so I want to be serious about it, but we made a decision based on our interpretation of the code and the policy of the city, as best we could see it. And we may have gotten it right, we may have gotten it wrong, but that's what appeals are for. So if we get it wrong a second time, somebody can appeal that and overrule us. But I think it's our prerogative to interpret the code and the policy of the city in a case like this. And I'm kind of reluctant to surrender that.
I would agree.
Is that a request by them or is that a suggestion?
Suggestion by me, so city council appoints after suggestion by staff. I think is how that, section of the code reads. The reasons why staff suggested are, easiest way to lose on a appeal is not to have all the procedural steps done, so procedural due process and, we go through that at staff to provide the notices, you all do, the good work in, appearance of fairness issues and holding appropriate hearings. It's more preferable to be able to hold that professional land use attorney to, the procedural due process than it is to put all you on the front lines of that, or if we were to lose and then, it became Sally or David's actions on the planning commission that are causing that, so there is some protection in that I see for you all.
Where would that hearing take place and when?
Where almost exclusively here or remotely.
Okay.
When it will depend on the availability of professional, when the application comes in, and we can get the discussion in front of the city council, which I can provide you all with information to be able to contribute to that, so a counterpoint to what I might recommend.
And then you have to notice.
And then we have to
Yeah.
So
notice when
there's a time period.
Yeah,
there
there's
that-
quite a time period.
I imagine it playing out this summer still, all of those things coming in. City council meets next Thursday. Don't know that we'll have an application that comes in by next Thursday in order to put the issue in front of the city council meeting and for their decision, so.
Well, yeah, let me soliloquize just a moment longer, and that is, I think you provide us fine procedural advice. I'm not worried that we're not getting good procedural advice. I understand being cautious, but I think in this case, maybe backhanded compliment to you, you're being overcautious. And secondly, we'll have a full quorum, or we could have a full quorum where we didn't last time. We have a new member. We might reach a different decision. You two might have ideas or points to contribute that the three of us didn't consider when we had the first hearing. But to me, it's the planning commission's job to hear these cases. And there's a place for hearings officers and attorneys. I understand that, but it seems to me that this is a policy call. I thought it was a policy call.
Mhm.
And it's a policy call based on our code and our plan, and that's what we're here for. So I'm kind of reluctant to say, I turn it over to legal counsel. I go that way if you really feel strongly about it, Dan, or if the rest of the commission feels strongly about it, we kind of inclined to play our role.
Yeah, I would like to see it come back to the planning commission and then go to the hearings exam. Largely because, I think we did a pretty reasonable job of working with these folks. And it's sort of suggests to me that if you don't like what you hear from the planning commission, You
You go
submit a new
somewhere else.
application and you get a hearings
Yeah,
exam.
exactly.
Mm,
It's a
just-
slippery slope.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
forum
mean-
shopping, you know, like,
It's tax dollars.
If they wanted to appeal our last decision, they could have done that and gone to Superior Court, but they didn't.
Yep.
Mary?
Having experienced quite a number of hearings examiners, hearings with the county, they use them quite a lot. Hearings examiners are well-trained, and I don't think you have anything to fear from them taking over your job. However, these folks, if what I heard correctly at the very beginning, have brought out their religious card, which is way more expensive if you're for attorneys. I think it would be wise to use the hearings examiner for this issue because of that, just that. That opens up a different can of worms, and I'm not sure you want to be involved in that. But having said that, you do have a city attorney whom you can ask a question and say, what do you recommend?
right, exactly.
And then you can maybe make a firmer or a better based decision on that. I would not discount the hearings examiner. They are well-trained to do their jobs, and they're almost judges, not almost, they are judges. And I've read some pretty good decisions from the hearings examiner, and I thought that the city had signed on to the hearings examiner thing with the county. I'm not sure, I remember this from years ago, so, but yeah, I would talk to your attorney and see what it's, just to make that decision.
Well, I think we gotta wait till, see what the
and see
application
what that
comes
is,
in
yeah.
and
Yeah.
what it's about.
too.
I mean, it's all kind of a little horse
So-
before the.
Yeah, what I'm hearing from you though, from this is enough for me to evaluate, reevaluate. And if I still do recommend using the hearing examiner, I'll be able to report that the planning commission believes that it should come back to them. I've heard enough of your voices there to be able to provide that. And then also inform all of you, of when that application, or when the decision of the city council would be pending, in case you
That's
speak
fine.
for yourselves on that.
Good enough, thank you.
I would concur with the opinion of the rest of the planning commission.
Yeah, and churches are subject to the code. Our decision had nothing to do with religion, it had to do with land use,
Right,
and churches are subject to land use requirements too, so.
they
I
do
mean,
have some
Yeah.
exceptional leeways for religious institutions, but still the primary. Thing to consider is, is it appropriate and does it have any negative impacts?
Exactly.
So, unfortunately, I was pumping a sewer system. Instead of being here last month, I would have much rather been here.
I
but-
think you might have.
The other thing this staff report does is. Goes into the file to close the application on.
Yeah.
And so before you showing that, hey, we didn't forget to adopt finding of facts. Application was just pulled, so.
That's fine.
Dot your i's, cross your t's.
Just a question, say the second application did come in citing religious reasons. Is the planning commission even allowed to consider religious reasons when considering an application?
Good question.
What happens with, when the question of religion is central to it. The city can place, restrictions on the free exercise of religion when there's a valid governmental interest in doing so. So that these are what's interpreted through the courts and down to us, so this valid governmental interest, needs to exist. And in evaluating the valid governmental interest, what happens is you're used to sitting there as the quasi judicial body saying, okay, applicant, show me the facts, demonstrate why you meet this code, the burden of proof is yours. When we're demonstrating the valid governmental interest in restricting that freedom of religion. The burden of proof is placed on the city to say that this restriction that we're doing, or the denial in this case, is valid because, and then clearly articulating those to satisfy our burden of proof in providing the restriction or the denial or the conditions that go on it. So yes, the city must consider those religious freedoms in the context of the application that's submitted and justify why this action is a valid restriction of those. It's not evaluating it religion for religion to say this, we're considering religion in the sense of in a comparative sense in that way. But we do need to note that there is a religious freedom that exists in our country and our state constitutions, and adjust how we operate.
Well, I think the way that the code's written, and like I said, we do allow for churches in places that aren't zoned for something that would be of multi-meeting assembly. So, I mean, that already exists, and it's not, partisan to one religion or the other. So even if it is a church and they're still asking to do something that's outside of what's normally permitted, I mean, even the one that's on closer to, what is the one on the corner there?
Methodist.
The Methodist Church.
No, the one that's the older one that came in and they wanted to, there wasn't a church there and they were reapplying for church status, right? And to meet that, we came up with a criteria, you have to provide parking, you gotta do this, this and this. But wasn't, yes, you can move back into that, but you also have to meet all of these requirements of any other business. So, I mean, it's a little tricky, but it's not, I mean, we have a roadmap to go by. It's not just, you just can't come in and say, you're violating my religious freedoms. You're free to practice whatever religion you want, but you're asking to do something inside the city and vary from the codes that we have written, so.
So if they state that there's some restriction on the religion due to this ruling, it sounds like the planning commission has to acknowledge that they are restricting freedom of religion because of the land use regulations. But my contention is, or my question is, because they say they're restricting, or that we're restricting religion by ruling on this, do we automatically agree that we are restricting religion and that we are therefore restricting it because of land use regulations?
Yeah, good question, but not necessarily. I mean, we're trying to see around the corner for a potential future application here, but the previous application was for to operate a preschool in a pre-existing church building, and the church was permitted as a conditional use under just the process that you described. So the church is a conditional use in a residential neighborhood, and it has to provide parking and has a reasonably small impact on the neighborhood because people show up on Sundays for church and maybe a couple times during the week for other activities. But now we're talking about 5 days a week of more activity. And so there's a question of land use compatibility and transportation, and that's what we evaluated.
Yeah.
So is it a restriction of religion per se, or is it a restriction of use? I would say.
Well, and that's what comes back to the reason I asked the question is because Ben said, if freedom of religion is restricted, or they claim that it is, then we have to acknowledge that we're doing this, we're restricting that freedom of religion due to land use regulation.
Yeah.
And this is cart before the horse. We don't have the
Yeah.
application yet.
Yeah.
But the next question is, do we actually say that we're restricting
That
freedom
would
of
be a good
religion?
question to pose to the city attorney before we do that.
Yeah.
So I
Can of worms.
think too, you can also look at it that we're not prohibiting them from operating a preschool, just not at that location.
Right.
So are you really?
Yeah,
prohibiting
sure.
Again, it's because as if anybody else wanted to start a preschool in that area. Besides the fact that it's a church, would that be allowable in that particular zoning, and what are the criteria for that?
Right.
The fact that it's currently a church and they wanna add this to it, that's like saying, I have a club that doesn't serve alcohol, but now I'm gonna get a liquor license and I wanna do this too. That's a subset parcel that. I mean, it's, yeah.
My reasons for recommending to the hearing examiner are growing.
Well, again, Ben, I
Not
think,
a support
you know,
that.
you've heard our discussion. I think several of us feel like it's our job to split these hairs.
Well, and I think it is, and I think, you know, it's our job to look at what the city code is. To look at what the proposal is and say, yes, it meets that, or it doesn't, or here's what could be done to modify the project to meet that. You know, I don't think we need to get wrapped around the axle as to whether or not we're prohibiting them from exercising their religious freedoms.
To talk about it in sort of a different venue, so the freedom of speech is another issue that cities commonly deal with, and especially in our sign regulations, and so signs are a way that people speak. And yet all communities have sign regulations, and they acknowledge through that process that this is a restriction on that freedom of speech. The court interpretations for that are that you're regulating the time, place, and manner of speech, and that there are valid governmental interests in doing that. The content of the speech is where you can't regulate that, but it's an acknowledgement by the government that there's some restriction on speech. Speech, Americans and Washingtonians have the right to speak without undue government interference in that. And due government interference, time, place, and manner. So yes, there may not need to be a specific finding that this is restricting religion in this way, and that's okay because of these valid governmental interests, but that would be foolish to just ignore the argument.
Well, it's a little bit like saying, I'm holding a poster versus I want to paint a mural. Those are two different things, and that's where the regulation comes in, is you have to fall under the sign code regulations. Whereas if you want to stand on the corner and hold up a sign, as long as it's not super offensive to somebody, then that's on somebody else to complain about. But as the city, that's not in our purview, right?
All right, let us know.
Okay, I will.
We're ready to rumble if you are.
Let's talk about work plan.
Work plan, you set out a work plan at the start of this year. You had a full commission at that time. Commission has changed over some with Tony's addition. The work plan that you set out talked about doing the zoning update that has been done, doing the flood update that has been done, completing the comprehensive plan biennial amendment cycle, of which there were no applications, so that was an easy done. Started continuing to work toward the parking update, annexation policy, and then starting a discussion about the zoning map. So we've explored the parking by a subcommittee, the annexation by a subcommittee, and talked about the zoning map by a subcommittee, and we haven't put effort into the zoning map one at the subcommittee level. Planning staff time is busy. Spring is grant writing season, so there are lots of grant proposals that have gone out already this late winter and into the spring now. And acting on other successful grants. So one of those is going to be the tree preservation plan, which is tree preservation utility conflicts management, so, I should just call it the undergrounding plan because that's what it is. It's talking about how to remove the utility lines from the conflict instead of removing the trees from the conflict, and that's been the status quo now. There's a tree that might interfere with that utility line. Take it down. That is, so we're gonna work with a consultant on that with funding through the State Department of Natural Resources to develop this plan. We, in the application developments, working closely with the PUD is the representative of the utilities there, and we'll continue to work with them to start moving that forward and still developing our overall scope for what the project is. It's something planning commissioners could be involved in the subcommittee sort of stance, and that would be outside of meeting time. We also think I've talked about it some, but the critical areas ordinance is a set of regulations that are required of us by the State Growth Management Act. Those regulations protect critical areas, geologically hazardous areas, frequently flooded areas, fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas, wetlands, and critical aquifer recharge areas. And we have to update these on an amendment cycle that's established by the state. Our amendments are due mid-year 2026. We've been given $20,000 over the next 2 years to state fiscal years to advance that. We've completed frequently flooded with the work that we did, so that leaves 4 remaining to review our regulations for consistency with the best available science that's out there right now. That's jargon from the state. And it'll be an effort that we start working on the second half of this year. That will come to the planning commission. I don't think that's a subcommittee one. I think that's around these tables to get that started.
Well, back to your list if we can, I mean, the zoning map issue ought to come to the full planning commission this year in the next 6 months, right? Up to you in terms of timing. But the annexation thing is frustrating, and that we're still waiting for sewer policy, right? So until the sewer, it's like the cart's behind the horse, and the horse is the sewer policy. So until and unless that gets resolved, I'm not sure we can put the annexation issue back in the work plan as much as I want to deal with it. Okay. What do you think about that?
And, hopefully we'll get some resolution to the sewer issue. And we can move ahead with that. Clearly, I think the more significant, issue is wrapping up what that sewer extension policy is going to be, because that is really going to guide land use.
Absolutely.
Within the city limits.
Is that coming from Public Works?
Public Works and the council,
Council, and there was a citizens committee, of course, that provided a fair amount of input on that.
Any ETA on that report?
The city council has authorized a public release draft. So the way we typically process through things is staff will present a discussion draft to you, to city council, and work out some of those main details to say, this is a program that could work and be implementable by the city. Is this something you're comfortable sending out for public comment, publicly releasing as the draft? And so city council has gone through that process with the sewer septic issues, and they've authorized that public release draft. It's now in staff's hands to develop the public release plan and generate public comment on that. And we have initiated that. So imagine that when we do, it'll hold open until the July meeting. City council will have the opportunity to amend their public release draft and continue discussion, move forward with ordinance change in July. So. It becomes unpredictable at that point, and they haven't put a hard date on themselves to say, well, this is the last time we're gonna stop talk about this issue, either leave it at the status quo or make a change.
Well, that's encouraging. I mean, it could get done in the next few months.
I certainly hope so.
That would be nice.
Go through those discussions and.
So is that your entire work plan?
That's an indication of some of the things staff's working on, and so wondering if there's any specific, policy types or issues that the planning commission wants to prioritize, where we could look at where that could come into meeting schedule.
Well, I have a question when the city puts out its, or the council puts out its discussion draft. Is that something that we should be taking a look at as the planning commission in terms of how we feel it fits with the comprehensive plan and the zoning? Yeah.
Sure wouldn't hurt to have that report.
I think that's a good
That
point.
is a good point.
Because again, it's gonna set us up to either make recommendations or that make sense about annexation or not. And so therefore, I think it would be good for us to see it, get a presentation on it, deliberate on it, make some recommendations to council if we think it's appropriate.
Yeah, and that's all, how it will shape orderly growth within the city
Right,
too.
yeah.
Is there an annexation that's pending before the board?
No, it's more that we were trying to grapple with the policy, Tony, of like, under what circumstances are we gonna be approving annexations and what are the requirements that are gonna go with that? And to try to sort of modernize the city's approach and regularize it as opposed to ad hoc. Well, this guy's making a hell of a case, we ought to annex him, and that one didn't sound as convincing. It ought to be standards based.
Sure. Good.
Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, I had suggested climate change be one of the things that you all look at, and mitigation features and also adaptive methodologies to address climate change in our community. I mean, it's here. It's not like it's a big secret anymore. And we don't even have climate change as a definition in our city policies. So, and affordable housing. I think that's something the planning commission should take up and make some recommendations. The city council isn't doing very much on the issue. And it's going to have to be policy. It's not going to be just building more houses. There's policy changes that also have to be addressed. How many vacation homes can a community take? And especially vacation homes that are actual homes that could be used by residents. And so I think those two issues are biggies.
So Ben, is there stuff with respect to base zone requirements or ADU requirements that needs to be refreshed, reconsidered, reexamined? I know there's been past work before I was here by the planning commission on some of those issues, but is it timely to dive into that, just some of that?
It can be, city council is doing some. They want to move the needle on housing affordability. There's and I don't know the scope of this, but there's a homeless, maybe it's not restricted to that. Washington Gorge Action Programs is assisting the Skamania County Homeless Housing Council in their effort to somehow address affordability. I don't know what that effort is or what sort of recommendations might come out of that. But at this point, the discussion seems rudderless. And so
Seems relevant?
rudderless.
Rudderless, so sorry. There's a big
Not
difference between
relevant.
rudderless and relevant.
Yeah, there's not any specific direction of saying, look at this, look at the problem that this is creating and address that problem.
Yeah.
think that that sort of planning and analysis is definitely appropriate.
Well, so let me go back to the code in our role. In my experience, there are two things that can be done about housing affordability. Policy and money. We don't have any control over the money. So if somebody wants to subsidize affordable housing, and that would be a fine idea, because that's how, the main way you get it. Great, but if there's policy stuff about ADUs or base zone requirements or density, that we, in the name of making a positive contribution to the discussion about affordability, could take up, I would say, I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, it was, several years ago, we looked at, increased density, in some of these zones. And we got a fair amount of pushback on that, but I think the underlying issue that I don't think we've ever actually resolved is, what is the affordability problem we have? You know, to what extent are we short of affordable housing? What does it really mean? What's the unmet need in our community? And why isn't it met? You know, is it because we don't have enough land zoned for higher density housing? Or we have a lot zoned, but it's not being made available in the marketplace? And why is that? Well, small contractors make more money building the larger homes. They have financial limitations. Trying to build multifamily homes requires additional code requirements and costs. The lenders
funding.
and the lenders may not be there to support it. So I think we've sort of struggled with this and said, well, what's the silver bullet out here? And I don't think we've ever had a sort of a comprehensive conversation in terms of saying, yeah, we've got the physical infrastructure, we've got the zoning, we've got the financing there to do that.
Actions that we've taken in the name of affordability or that somehow effective. We have increased the cap, the maximum density allowed in the R3 multifamily zone. We have provided flexibility for
R2 and R1.
in
With the ADUs.
with ADUs, we've provided flexibility. We allow detached ADUs where we didn't before. We've reduced some of the restriction on ADUs. We've decreased the amount of parking necessary for housing downtown, housing construction downtown. We've provided dimensional flexibility for all developments in the R3, R2, R1 zones. We've allowed townhomes where we didn't allow townhomes. We've got a planning and development process that can greatly increase the flexibility that the way neighborhood is built. As part of that, we provide a density bonus when affordable housing is included in it. All these solutions that we have rely on the market to build things to the max potential density and then seek more. We're in a community where that's not what is happening, either from lack of capital or lack of desire to change this great place that we have. And that discussion is one that's playing out a lot at the city council level of keep Stevenson, keep Stevenson what it is. It's been a leading thought within the sewer discussion that they're having right now. And for that discussion in this council is it's defining that. It's defining how they look at all of their policies. And so with keep Stevenson being what underlies that, then there's a push to reevaluate where we might allow for higher density subdivision, where we might allow for apartments, and no longer say that we might allow them on some of the peripheral areas of town, and to keep that at very low density zoning, so 1 acre lots and that's what. The expectation that should be set out there, the expectation should not be that this could develop with apartments, or this could develop into subdivision like we see with Chinninger, to have it much larger, even not as dense as Ann's neighborhood and Hidden Ridge, so. The discussions that they're having right now are different than the discussions we had 11 years ago with the adoption of the comprehensive plan, or the updates that we had made to the comprehensive plan just 2 years ago. And so I don't know where it goes. What all of that started to say, the market isn't providing it at the cap to the max. If they're not taking advantage of the incentives and the bonuses that we offer above the max, a discussion about raising the floor to have a minimum density, to say that you shouldn't be developing on this lot unless you are doing something that's a greater density than keeping students in Stevenson. Seems like a non-starter.
Yeah, I don't, I think there's a fair number of actions been taken to provide some incentives. I think Charlie goes back to your basic thing, it's economics.
Yeah, yeah.
The private marketplace doesn't seem to be interested in building affordable housing at this point in time. Does that mean that somehow the public agency steps in, or some hybrid, housing summarized? There's a fair amount that has been done.
Mhm. Does
Yeah,
the
my-
size of the city have, no, it's fine, does the size of the city have something to do with that, since we're small? That there isn't the incentive,
Probably.
I mean, compared to more high density in Portland versus here.
Yeah, I guess again, to return to my question, and based on both your comments, the economics part of it is important, is big, is the big dog here. The small dog, if you will, is what we could do in the code to make it possible, but it won't make it happen.
Mhm.
And so if there's still stuff that we should grapple with to make it possible, even if somebody else's, whether it's the nonprofit sector or the governmental funds from some agency, are gonna have to step up and make it happen. There's something left that we should address in addition to the work that's already been done to make it possible. I think we should try to do that, just to set the table as best we can, because it doesn't guarantee anything, but at least it removes any remaining obstacles. And I don't know how many remain, if you've already addressed all the stuff about ADUs and higher densities, and can you build a cottage cluster subdivision, small houses and, the R2 zone? Yes, you can. So, if that kind of stuff is all, it's all already possible, then there's not, as frustrating as it may be, there may not be that much for us to do. But if there's still a few things that we ought to grapple with, I'd sure be interested.
Well, and that's, 3-4 years ago when we had this conversation before, the whole issue kind of went around, what is affordable housing? I mean, everybody says, oh, we need affordable housing, but it's like, what does that actually mean? And at that time, when I did the analysis, it meant for affordable housing for this area, it had to be $185,000.
Right.
And the contractors are like, I can't build anything for $185,000. I don't make any money. So you need to make it so that I can do more, get rid of all the regulations so I can just come in. Which then became more of a special interest kind of thing, because I want to be able to do what I can do so that I can make money. But is that equaling an availability of affordable housing? And it wasn't. And so that's where the ADUs, I mean, we were like, what can we actually achieve and what can we actually do without looking for, grants for building, actual developments. But on the individual levels, because it came back to, like Ben said, people move here and live here because they like the way that it is, not, I live in this little quaint house next to a 16 unit apartment thing for, whatever reason. So I mean, it really comes to. First off, if you're gonna talk about affordable housing. What does that really mean? What does the money mean? What is someone who lives in Skamania County, works in Skamania County, what can they afford? And is that even possible that we can do that? What do we have to do to make it possible? And it's not making it unregulated, you know.
Right, not completely.
And,
Yeah, though I would divide the issue. I mean, I would divide the issue into affordable rental housing and affordable home ownership. Now, we had Skamania Lodge in here saying they want to build housing for their summertime short-term employees, because guess what? It's hard to find affordable rental housing here for those seasonal workers.
They're
So
just converting 3 of the rooms for them
yeah,
right now.
they want to solve that problem themselves, but then there's affordable home ownership, which is a whole different matter. And again, this is anecdotal evidence, but young couple just bought the house next door to us. I'm not sure how they pulled that off, but there are 2 other houses on our street for sale, and they're both over $400,000. How many starter home purchasers can afford a $400,000 house? So, you know, there's a supply problem of affordable, you know, home ownership. And then there's a supply problem of affordable rental housing, and you don't solve those.
Well,
two
even
at
the
the same
rental housing has gone up considerably
Yeah,
when earnings haven't,
yeah, exactly.
you know, so you gotta look at, I mean, there's a whole bigger discussion. On, you know, what is our community actually providing as far as like jobs? You know, we don't have, Google doesn't have a huge thing here where
Right.
everybody's getting. You know, $50,000 a year. I mean,
Right.
I think that 3 years ago, the median income in Skamania County was like 32,000,
26.
26, yeah.
Yeah.
And it depends on how you look at the data, but I mean, basically it was under 40.
Right,
What does that buy you? Like I said, it was $185,000
Doesn't buy
was
you
like
groceries.
your cap, and you can't even get. You know, a piece of property even close to that now. I mean, lots in town are. Close to that.
exactly.
But again, not knowing either what the magnitude of the problem is in terms of housing. You know,
Yeah.
what do we need? You know, what's available now? I mean, you could go out and you could look at the subsidized housing that we have now in terms of the rental market and say, gosh. Are you fully occupied? Do you have a long waiting list?
Yeah,
I don't
2
think
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, we really haven't even, I think, totally defined the magnitude of the problem we're trying to address. And
Well, obviously, there's an interest to it. I mean, again, it's, I think, turn to you, Ben, and say, if there's policy stuff that Jeff and you and Ben think that we ought to grapple with, I'd say, put it on the work plan, because obviously just this discussion, you know, something we all care about and something that's pretty,
It is.
it's a big Rubik's Cube problem for the community.
Well, and I understand folks want to maintain the character of the town. I appreciate that. I mean, I've got close to 3/4 of the century of experience in this town. And it's changed, believe me. You know, it's not what it was. And I think we need to be thinking that the fact is that if we don't want it to change, it will change despite that.
Right.
Mhm.
Ways you may
And,
not like.
and we'll lose what we want to keep. Mary?
It's apparent to me that y'all need more information. I'm on the Homeless Housing Council, and WAGAP is not providing affordable housing. Let me say that right off the bat. They provide vouchers and other things for people to, if they can find someplace to rent that they can stay in it. I think you need to hear from WAGAP, and then Mid-Columbia Housing Authority also. They're building, I want to say 200 units in Hood River and 129 in the Dalles. Now, this is public housing. And how public housing is defined is you don't spend more than 30% of your salary on the payment, monthly payment. Of other affordable housing is, I think I've spoken to at least 1 or 2 of you. I'm not sure if I mentioned it before. Hector Hinojosa from the Community Roots in Vancouver. He has spoken to the Housing Council and to, I thought he came here, but maybe not. he's building affordable homes, tiny homes and family homes in Vancouver. And he got the funding for this, it's through the 501c3, their community roots. It might not hurt to hear from him, he knows how to leverage the money that he got. And he got money from the state, like $3 million to do some things and other. So I think you need to hear from these organizations that are doing stuff in our community. Mid-Columbia Housing Authority covers the entire gorge. Karen Long is the one who reports to us in the Homeless Housing Council. Wagep, Leslie, of course, Naramore, and then Hector Hinojosa. I have his contact information if you need it, but I think you all do need more information in the sense of what's possible. You know, I have urged somebody to buy the Manor Apartments and tear the suckers down and put something more modern up there that can house more people. And I also think you need to hear from your business leaders in this community. I've talked to John and I've heard from others. Workforce housing is a must for this type of community. If we want tourists to come here, then you need the workers to take care of those tourists. And workers need to be paid a living wage too. So, but they need someplace to live, and I totally understand why the lodge is doing what they're doing. But, you know, yeah, maybe we don't, I'm not sure, you know, we have those apartments, the Cascade Apartments and Rock Creek Apartments, they're full to the brim. And they are subsidized. There is Section 8 housing up there. Some parts of it are Section 8, and other parts aren't, or some housing isn't. But, you know, maybe we could build another apartment house. Look at what Harry Schumacher has in the Pioneer Building on top. He's got 10 units up there. So there's possibilities, but yes, the market is greedy. It will never build you affordable housing. So I think it's time for government entities to suck it up and say, okay, private, and non-private, maybe getting something together. Or if the privates don't want to do it, then the government needs to start thinking about providing or building housing. So I'll be there with you if you need any more information. But there is a lot of information out there to be had, and those are the entities you could use the information from. Thank you.
Well, I think that would help to kind of see if there's anything that we can tweak,
Yeah,
you know, policy code wise.
Yeah.
You know, if there's something that they say, hey, this worked here, you know, then we can look and see, well, can we adopt something that utilizes that same methodology?
Yeah.
So,
good point. I mean, if we do take this up, maybe invite those providers to come in. Talk with us.
Yeah.
the contractors that came last time really weren't very helpful. I mean, they basically just said, we just need to be able to do whatever we want.
Yeah, but for-profit contractors aren't gonna solve this problem.
Yeah, no, they had.
And I think particularly when you look at the contractor base that we have in this community, you know, they're small businesses.
Yeah. And they're busy.
And they're looking at where their margins, where they make their margins. And, you know, the market for higher end housing has been pretty robust in the last few years. And
Yeah.
so that's where they are.
You need to build $800,000 houses to make it.
That's.
But,
there's
you
plenty
know,
of that work.
it seems to me that, you know, there's so many different aspects in terms of addressing this particular issue. The planning commission can only do so much. And, you know, you have to have, but really, it would be great if the city council took that up and brought some of the key parties together, not just the planning commission.
Yeah.
Bring the financial and the contractors and the housing providers together to say, hey, here's the issue that we're trying to solve. What are the bottlenecks? Why are we not getting that housing on the
And
ground?
what do we have to do to get it?
Planning Commission tried to lead that discussion in 2021 and lacked the clout. Not necessarily the information, but the clout to make some modifications. One of them that's proposed, this one blows my mind. City of Stevenson is this big. We have 5 different residential zones in our zoning code. It's too many.
Mhm.
It's too many. It becomes a reason why people are saying restrictions, it's too confusing. It is. Add flexibility, so leading that discussion, but it runs up against other community issues and it didn't go anywhere. ADUs are another thing that we can look at, and the last time we looked at that was 2017, 2018 or so, and maybe even more recently than that. I think it was
Yeah,
more
we did.
recently than that.
More recently.
We relied on what Skamania County had just done, so that the contractor basis that we have knows how to do it there. Now you know how to do it in the city too. We can relook at some of those things, and I think that Skamania County is relooking at some of those things. Small, little changes, that are doable. According to the Growth Management Act in Washington, we have to plan for those 5 critical areas that I talked about, and it's other larger communities. They need to, at the county level, they need to assess the demand for housing in their county over the next 20 years. They need to break that out into the different income strata that are generating that demand, and they need to determine where, as in which communities, which cities, which areas of the county are gonna be expected to accommodate that demand, and then develop the regulations that actually do accommodate the demand. So they have a very much more hands-on approach where they're adjusting the maximum densities and setting the minimum density and setting that expectation for the community that there will be change here. We don't have that pressure from above. We don't have that leadership from the county to say, Stevenson, you need to accommodate 300 more units in the next X years. And so update your regs and so that you can do that. We're doing it, if we are doing it without outside pressure, we tried at the planning commission level to show the need, and it wasn't enough. I don't know where it leaves us, but certainly getting some budget from the city council to do that, to start initiating a process like that. It's something that's my request going into next year and next year's work plan.
Well, and I think the council has to be an integral partner in terms of doing that, because you have so much policy if you're looking at for your own infrastructure. In terms of water, sewer, streets, internet.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a piggyback issue. You're like, oh, we need to increase densities. And yet we're struggling to keep the sewer system viable in the next, decade. And that's at the current rate of growth. And so it just becomes a small solution creates a larger problem. And that's where planning is supposed to help with that is, how do we do this in an intelligent, thoughtful way, not just knee-jerk reactions, which come 5 years from now, we're like, oh geez, how did we get in this place?
As we were having those discussions the last time, one of the things that came up was, well, what protections do you have in place that if this density occurs, that Stevenson will still be Stevenson? So are there tree preservation regulations? No, there aren't. That's not something that Stevenson wants. And so when Chinadere comes in, people who moved here for Stevenson for the tree cover and see that say that's not what we want. We don't want any sort of growth like that. people moved in there because there's no trees and the views, and so. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm saying that the conversation just about housing and providing housing led us to the point where we're talking about a tree preservation ordinance, which is its own massive set of policy work with its own multi-month work plan and multi-$1,000 consulting budget that comes with it, and I don't know where to start. Doesn't seem like putting out hey, existing public, we're gonna regulate how you take down trees is
Well, in the success plan, didn't you work on that?
appreciated.
There's a lot of housing added into that for the downtown area. Whenever that happens, it's just not happening. So, you know,
And in some of the conversations we've had there, I'm kind of intrigued with the idea of doing an urban renewal project.
very much so.
Because you can do it. I've had people look at me and said, Little Stevenson do an urban renewal project?
Be done.
Yes, it can be done. You know, and it's.
That's a great idea.
That public-private partnership.
Solves the investment part.
Mhm.
Policy.
Yeah,
investment,
yeah.
There's the investment.
Well, that would be a good item to put in our work plan.
Mhm,
Um,
Very much so.
yeah,
It's essentially the same concept that has been part of the Columbia realignment project. Realign that, provide a canvas that somebody can build as part of all of our analyses. We were helping to build a pro forma, so if somebody comes in with money wanting to build, here's what you could do, here's how much it would make, or here's some of the barriers city that you might start to address. That one, I think, is less of a city council priority in doing that, moving that forward, staff capacity for us to put that together and do all the things that we want to do and have other grants to do and deliverables made, so.
well, so it sounds like there's gonna be a focus on grants the next couple months, I get that. And then you're gonna have a better understanding of where the council's head is than at least I do, maybe all of us do. If there's stuff in this cluster of issues. Like urban renewal or revisiting some of the zoning map stuff that's in our wheelhouse. I'd say, you know, really try to put that at, try to raise that up on the list. Because this horrible housing issue is just gonna get worse. It's not gonna get better. So there's both policy and money to address it. And maybe some of the money comes from urban renewal, maybe it comes from nonprofits, maybe it comes from other governmental agencies. That's again, outside of our purview. But it's just gonna get worse. The rate of production is really low. And in terms of anything that is affordable. So, you know, again, Ben, you're gonna have the sense of what art of the possible here. You know, again, my counsel from experience would be, you know, focus on positioning the city for what we want. And spend more time on that than on mitigating against what we don't want.
Mhm.
Because that's a losing game. And then, you know, if we can set the table for more affordable housing, and then it takes things like an urban renewal district or you know, one of the agencies or entities that Mary mentioned coming in and making an investment, then we've at least created an environment where they can. That's probably all you know. There used to be an oil change place in Portland called Oil Can and Henry's, and their slogan was, "We don't want to change the world, we just want to change your oil." It seems like that's us here. Like, we can't change everything, but we can probably change the code.
Yeah.
I think one of the questions you all need to answer is ADUs. Do they really help housing authority, affordability? Because what I hear in our community is they're being rented out.
Right,
To
if they
make
end up
money.
being vacation rentals, then the answer is no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think we need questioning or more information about vacation homes and how many are off the market. And also ADUs.
Yeah.
Are they are helping or hindering, and are they creating another issue for you?
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. They can just be more vacation housing, not necessarily.
Exactly.
Well, they went to try to answer some of the issues of increased density.
Yeah,
Because, obviously where they help out.
yeah, they
They're,
can.
what people choose to do with their property,
Right,
we don't have any control over.
Exactly.
yeah.
But if we provide the situation that they have that capacity, that's
Feeds-
kind of all we can do.
Feeds the inventory.
Right,
Yeah,
so it's,
Yeah.
Do the economics favor the vacation rental versus, a long-term rental? Is there something that we can do to make that more flexible, either through an initiative or, a grant or something like that, because basically everybody's trying to survive. And so you spent this money putting in an ADU. You did it for a reason, not because you just wanted to have more room.
Yeah.
Well, that's a policy issue like Chinnedir. They should have fourplexes in them. That should have been part of the original policy.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna have subdivisions, two-plexes, fourplexes, have them there. And, or say 30% has to be affordable. I'm sorry. And if you want a workforce, you have to have housing.
Mhm.
And that's how communities get broken up. They don't. Your workforce can't live 60 or 80 miles away.
Right.
Right now, they can't afford anything within that range and that, so it's important.
big deal.
I'm freezing here.
Blow it this way.
It seems like so often too, our decisions are made by what we want. Rather than what we can really achieve, and some of the things we want. We're not willing to pay the cost for those,
Mhm.
and I think that's what we're experiencing here to some extent. It would be nice if this community really thought through, what are our priorities? What is it that we really want to see in this community? And generally I hear, well, we don't want it to change, but I'm not quite sure what that means.
Yeah,
I'd like to mind. Because it is changing.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of the fear is that it changes in the way that Hood River changed, where now no one can afford to live there. That's the kind of change I think everybody is hesitant to go towards.
Well, I think you're seeing some of that here now.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know. We aren't cresting the million plus for the little downtown houses, but it's,
Just wait.
I don't know. And the way that things are trending out, I think we got a couple years before that'll happen.
Well, knowing the speed with which we address some of these issues, a couple of years,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
maybe right today. So, Ben, how do we want to summarize what we're looking at here in terms of work plan? We've got zoning map and
Identify a scope of potentially small scale changes that you might be able to incorporate right now. The first easiest thing, do that thing.
Low hanging fruit is what
Yeah,
they call
yeah,
it.
look for those, and queue them up and let's take them on.
any other thoughts?
There's also the potential to do trainings, so, common issues that we deal with, or, less common issues, just training. I was looking through some of the library of things that I've built before, so urban design training, which I might just turn over to Charlie to help with some of that too, but subdivision process trainings, quasi judicial decision making sort of trainings, building those in, opportunities. There's one that we haven't dealt with very much, but about exactions, which would be requirements of developers to provide some public benefit, and balancing the requirements with their impact on that public topic. So we haven't dealt with that much, but there's some big constitutional issues related to that we could dive into some. To have the time devoted to that. I would like to be able to head down and complete some of the other things that we're working on. before diving into much, new stuff.
Yeah. Time that is received.
Well, yeah, you've got the broadband stuff out there too, and
Yes.
all that stuff is moving at some pace anyway, let's put it that way. Some faster than others. So for the immediate future, we might have
We might have a sewer policy.
a sewer policy, yeah,
Yeah,
which would be that. Be nice to take a look at
we
that.
need to have a sewer.
Parking is wrapping, that phase of parking is wrapping up, put it in your court soon too, so.
That'd be good. But,
anytime.
and perhaps at some point in time, some discussion on the critical areas ordinance too.
Mhm.
And how we deal with some of the emerging science. Anything else? So the digital divide, I couldn't get that link to work.
Oh. Sorry.
It's,
I'm sorry.
the digital didn't work.
We're on the wrong side of the divide. That's why it happened.
That's what he meant to do.
See?
That's pretty
You
clever.
needed proof, if you needed proof, you got it.
Yeah, there they are.
United.
Yeah, well, that's too bad. It's, there's a map that's put out by the broadband office, state broadband office. That breaks down, statewide. What type of services available, and the application and the potential customers, there are many different ways that they can slice it, and you can, light up all those different ways. We're on the wrong side of the ways. There is money coming to address that. Being on the wrong side means that here's the need, here's money, here's the need, here's money. It's a good project.
We're on the wrong side, does that mean that we're on the wrong side and we won't?
No.
We're on the wrong side to get the
No.
money, or we're on the
We're-
right side to get the
Right
money?
side to get the money.
We're on the wrong right side.
Yeah.
Right side. That's a good August.
Yeah.
You know, but that's an issue about franchises too. I pay $80 a month for my wireless, which is spendy on my budget. And I tried to get the cheapest one that they're offering. It's Wave here. Well, they wouldn't let me change. I'd have to go to a different, well, you know, you're here and you can't get the newest offer that we're doing.
That's very typical.
Yeah,
Well, it shouldn't be. It should be
I
totally illegal, and that's something
That was
that the franchise
Comcast and
agreement
Xfinity.
should be covering
Mhm.
in the community. And that, and
They
the,
incentivize you to sign up and then.
yeah, and the ACP program is done,
Mhm.
the community program for people. So, of lower income and that, and it's like, in a rural community, that's like basic that you should have is some connection to stuff. So, I think that, and the city council does the franchise, don't they?
And
Yeah.
it's hard for internet,
Mhm.
it's hard for telephone because of the Telecommunications Act.
Yes, Bill Clinton, thank you
Constraints.
very much,
Yeah.
1996.
Yes. We do have a franchise for the cable service,
Mhm.
that Wave provides, and so there's some thing there, but using it for our good is,
Well, that's why we have congressionals. You bitch to them and they can bitch to the president. And, you know, that 1996 act has to be changed because it really, and we have what, the CenturyLink? And I don't know how many complaints I hear about them all the time. And they can now be a monopoly in rural communities. Who does that? We got rid of monopolies. So there's a lot of issues. Now, have you noticed the big poles that went up in our town? I didn't notice, but I walked out of my library, there are, like 50, 60 foot poles. They replaced the old poles along the roads here. And they're huge. And they really cut the spatial area in front of you. PUD can't keep putting up higher poles so they can sell more pole space to the wires and make money. So the underground sounds very good, thank you. I'm cold and I'm freezing, couldn't go home.
Yeah. I'm not so sure that the PUD's making much money on those other lines.
Other link, other thought of the month there I have is the ADU naming conundrum. As planners, we took a very simple 2-syllable word, duplex, and changed it into an 8-syllable phrase, accessory dwelling unit. In order to, I guess, confuse the public that density isn't coming to the neighborhood. This is a good one. That's kind of acknowledging that and saying how, what was the memorable one for me? It's like calling coach seating on a plane accessory seating to the first class. Well, yeah,
That's actually really good.
and so,
Yeah.
you know, their suggestions are going with local things. So in the Southwest, a casita, a family compound, some other phrases, mother-in-law apartment.
Yeah, ADUs become the coin of the realm, whether it was a good phrase or a bad phrase.
Well, then if you have some different terminology, you have to define it, and if there's not a common agreement on what the definition is. Then it just, whereas. Like Charles says, ADU is fairly commonly used,
So it's Frankenstein's monster for sure.
Can I ask just a silly question? What's the difference between an R1 with an ADU and an R2?
The fact that it's R1.
Fair, that's an honest answer.
It's with it being in a single family residential zone. You can't by right build 2 dwellings where you can in an R2 zone. You can by right build an accessory dwelling unit, meaning you're living in one of the units, meaning its square footage is constrained usually, depending on
location has got some.
Yeah, there's some restrictions.
some restrictions. So there's 10 criteria that you have to satisfy.
So if you had a R1 with an ADU, you have to occupy part of the property. You can't rent both of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's,
That's a use difference, yeah.
Yeah. So in R2, you could do a duplex or,
Yeah.
And rent both if you want.
Rent both.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
so the density's still there. It's
density is
just the usage.
No difference, but use
is it
different.
still like this? I think it's delete. You might not have changed that.
I don't think you changed it.
Yeah,
Changed to it.
well, the way the density shakes out is the R1 district can be more densely developed than the R2 district. We
Yeah,
grappled with
for
that. I don't know.
square
if
footage
theory.
per
For
lot.
square,
Yeah,
Yeah.
In
per square
theory, it'll
foot,
take a long
because it
time.
requires more
We'll all
square
be
footage
gone
for the
before it ever
R2 to
happens.
qualify for a duplex.
Right.
Than a single residence does for an ADU.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's because.
Yeah.
When we change duplex to accessory dwelling
Yeah.
unit.
At the current rate of production of ADUs, it'll take a couple hundred years for that to happen.
Yeah.
Right, what the Yogi Bear said, in the long run, we're all dead.
But the state for the bigger communities has identified that owner occupancy as one of the primary barriers. They've identified parking requirements as another barrier. And so they told communities, you can't really do that anymore. Or you can if you justify it with a mountain of studies in this specific way, so. The states is working to alter that system, just not for here. We have to provide the use justification ourselves. If we want that.
So just as an observation, if I had to go back to Ballard for family stuff, is 20 years ago, you could find parking in Ballard. Now, there is absolutely no parking. I mean, and it's double parked, so you basically have one lane that you can drive up and down. And everything is multi-story, so it's kind of like, oh yeah, we got the density. But we gave
keep up
away
with the
this
parking.
parking requirement. And now you have to park 10 blocks away. To actually shop in the downtown, so it really became, you know, they kind of shot their businesses in the foot. In favor of having more buildings, but then those same people can't park their cars. And so they're having to pay for remote parking spaces. To keep their cars in. I mean, it became like a downtown. I couldn't believe it. It was, you know. It was crazy. Yeah. People still need to park cars.
Are we ready to adjourn?
I think we might.
I might entertain a motion to adjourn.
Not motion to adjourn.
I'll second that one too.
Motion and a second
Okay.
to adjourn.
Hint, hint.
We stand adjourned.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to get this.
Sorry, Ben.
Like,
Fine, you're fine, you're absolutely fine.
I'll take it with me, and get it to you this.
Sounds good.